Yeah, so the Linux distributions. Let's talk it that the first understand before talking about that the Linux and how do we launch that virtual machine and all those points. Yes, first let's try to understand that what are the different types of the Linux distributions are available. Yes, suppose in our laptop, what is that operating system? So which will get it? That's the default is Windows, right? The Windows or the Mac, if you are trying to take it that Apple one. But are they going to use it, the Windows and the Mac in the real time to set up that about data centers or applications to host it? The which operating system is recommended? Yes, we have that. The Windows systems also they use it for about our applications. But most of that, the environments we see that Linux-based operating systems. So only some specific technology point of view, like especially the Microsoft .NET or C Sharp or IA server, if you are going to use it. Yes, then we see that Windows-based operating systems. That is one case. Another case is for the developers in the development environment, developers' point of view. Yes, the Windows systems required. But the remaining most of the applications in the real time, what is the type of that operating systems which they are going to use it is instead of saying that Linux also Unix based operating systems. Unix. But in that Unix, especially we have that Linux, the specific distribution. But all these are all whatever these distributions. So whatever these are flavors. Suppose Windows, if you just observe that within that Windows, yeah, the different versions, 8 version, the Windows 10, Windows 11. But whatever we are using that Windows operating system in our laptop, that is home edition, right? Home editions. But in the real time, they use it Windows servers, the Windows server, which is supporting that the more managing about the domain based user logins. But what is the domain and all that will come back later. But yes, the home editions and the server editions, how do we have the different flavors on the Windows system itself? So on the base of the packages and the applications which we are going to use it, the Linux is also having the different types of distributions. But what are the different distributions? Yeah, the before going to understand that the distribution, first of all, so what are the important components of operating system, the Linux, especially we are going to talk it. Yeah, suppose on our Windows also, whenever we are talking about it, yes, you are buying the laptop, you need to plan it. What is the CPU that is required? What is the RAM? What is the storage? What is the network? So all those specifications we look into that, right? Hardware components. But whenever we install that, or whenever we are using the Windows, using the Windows operating system, we are accessing this indirectly these resources. Yes, whenever we buy the laptop, we think it all these resources. But after buying the laptop and you are going to use that the operating system, but operating system you are using that's Windows you have logged in is nothing but backend. There are all the hardware resources indirectly you are connecting, you are accessing that. Suppose you have opened one Word document or Excel sheet file or web browser, but backend that is going to use it some process mechanism that is going to use it some RAM and some like a data to load it or reading the data or writing the data point of it is going to use it disk read write operations, or if you are going to upload some data to that internet or downloading the files from the internet, yes, network read write operations. Yeah, indirectly we are accessing this all these, or we are yeah, using all these resources. But what is the operating system here? Can we say this is interface or not? Yes, Windows operating system, whatever we are using, that is interface. So as a user wise, we will log into that's Windows operating system, and you are using that application like Word document or Excel sheet or browsers. These are all the apps which have been installed on that operating system or some system softwares. Yeah, all these apps or the softwares we are using on the operating system. But operating system, what it is doing to run it, all these applications or the softwares back, and it is going to use it all these hardware resources. Yeah, so here what we can say that the OS layer is, this is the interface between that user or application to the backend hardware resources. The OS layer is very, very important. Directly we cannot access the hardware resources, right? Yeah, if you are hosting the same, I mean, if you are installing that application, suppose the Skype you are installing on the system, or Zoom you are installing on the system, that is one app, one software which is having the set of libraries and binaries we are installing as per the operating system. And whenever we use that software is going to use the backend all these hardware resources. Yeah, even that Linux or the Windows or the Mac or whatever it is, they're all the different the types of the operating systems. Linux is also one of the operating system, and which is a collection of softwares. But this Linux OS, what do we call this is? We'll call it Linux distribution. Yeah, on the base of the system softwares default. Suppose whenever we install the Windows, we'll get it some default user interfaces. Like if I need that the Word document or Microsoft Excel or PPTs, yes, I need to have that MS Office software. Or if I would like to configure this my storage related the drivers required. Or if I'm going to configure that networks drivers required. So there are all the system softwares or app application softwares. We install it on the base of, suppose Windows system, we have that Windows App Store, right? Windows App Store, the where we can install that apps. So default we got it some applications, but we can add it additional packages or additional softwares. So all that sections, what we can say that is, yeah, all these packages, the default packages which we are going to get it on the base of this, we say the Linux distribution. So what exactly that? The internal architecture of the Linux, if you just observe that, how is whenever we install the Linux operating system, how it is going to interact with the hardware resources. As we're taking that so far now, operating system is the main interface between that user app or system software to the backend CPUs or the hardwares which we have that. But a Linux operating system, whenever we are working that, what are the main component that is helping that to interact with the backend hardware resources is, we should know some points on it. Yes, what are those points? Yeah, as a user, if you're using some apps or if you're using some kind of commands execution, so all that commands whatever we are running about it, our apps we are running about it, so who is managing about it, that is, so from the Linux operating system point of view, especially shell is the main interface between that user app or system apps to the backend resources. Shell. But shell, what does it do this is, suppose if I'm trying to copy a file, copying file from one directory to another directory. So whenever I'm doing that operation, so the shell is going to take that operation, the copy operation. But if you're copying the file from one location to another location is nothing but it is required to allocate some storage, right? If the storage is not there, then you cannot copy it, the file. But backend, that storage which has been, which is available in the hard disk. But how do I get it? That's hard disk. Yeah. So whenever we are copying the file, shell is going to take that command, but shell is not going to perform that operation interacting with the hardware. What is the one more component interacting with the hardware is, that is a kernel is another important component. So which is going to interact with the hardware resources on the base of the request from the shell. So shell is it is a middleware component. So which take the request from that user, either from that app based request or CLI based request or GUI based request, whatever it is. Type of the request doesn't matter. It shell is going to take the request, and on the basis of the type of the request, it is going to forward to the kernel. Kernel is going to executing that actual command by interacting with the hardware resources. It processes the request. So the important components, if you try to understand it, is hardware layer. As if you are trying to take it like one virtual machine or server, or in our normal terminology, there is a laptop. Laptop. We don't say this laptop in the real time. We say that virtual machines or the servers. But if you are launching the virtual machine, is nothing but hardware devices required. That is a RAM, hard disk, CPU, and another layer is kernel. Yes, so when you are using this Linux operating system, so that operating system is going to have the kernel, so which is going to interact with the hardware resources. So this is the main core component of the OS. But directly are you going to access the kernel? No, they have designed one more interface. That, so what is that interface? That is the shell. So which coordinates about our users request, taking that, understanding that request, and converting into the kernel format and passing that request to the kernel. So it takes the commands from the user and executes it with the kernel functionalities. And finally, utilities. These are like utilities. Suppose if I would have installed some app on this, yes, that is application or compilers, C compiler or Python compiler or Java compiler, or some inbuilt the commands or utilities. So there are like a functionalities of an OS. Yeah, if you just understand that the operating system you are going to use, it is nothing but there are main layers which we have. So are you clear about this point? If everyone is following the type that clear components, yes. Yes, clear, clear, clear. Awesome, man. So good. Good response. Yeah, be active like this always and continue. Yeah, simple. What we have done so far is, so directly, whenever we are buying the laptop, we think about that storage and networking, the RAM, CPU, all these resources, but we don't directly interact with that, right? So we use that operating system. Operating system is the interface. So between that user and app to the, either you are using that system related apps or about our user related apps. is the main operating system which is going to have that interacting with the backend resources. But operating system, how they have designed? How they have designed? They have designed with the two main components, especially if we just talk it the Linux base, that is shell and kernel. So shell is the user interface, which we can say that. Yes, the tomorrow onwards we are going to run any commands is nothing but that's we use the shell. But we have the types of the shells and all this stuff later. We'll talk it. Yes, we use the shell. Shell is going to, yes, any command you are running is nothing but, or if you use it, any app you are installed on the OS, and if you're doing is nothing but the shell takes that request and it forwards the request to the kernel. Kernel is one of the core component which interacts with the backend hardware resources. Yeah, now if you just try to understand this Linux distribution is going to use that the kernel to interact with hardware resources. Now, what is the distribution if you just try to understand it, which is having the kernel plus applications. Suppose in our mobile apps, if we just try to understand it, we have that type of OS point of view, Android based and iOS based. But finally, like I mean, apps and Play Store point of view, we have the different the ways of that managing or using that interface. But objective is the same, right? Whether you are using Android mobile or whether you are using iOS mobile, doesn't matter that. But phone lift, phone or like a as that. But the basic features are the same. But some apps point of view, utilities point of view, that is a little bit different between the distributions. The same thing here also. Linux is having the so many distributions, but whenever we talk the distribution, all the OSs which are under the basic mechanism that is kernel, but on the base of the user interfaces and user packages, user utilities, we say that distribution. But what are the types of the distributions are available? Yeah, we have this the Red Hat based, yeah, which we say that RPM based Linux distribution. So the Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS Linux, Fedora, OpenSUSE, they're all the different flavors of Red Hat. They always say that flavors. But all these flavors which are using about it, the Red Hat RPM based. What is that? Suppose whenever we are buying the Android mobiles, we have that from the different providers, right? Like Samsung is giving that Android, or like OnePlus, we have the different providers who are providing that. But as per the provider point of view, that's the mobile style and the interface is some little bit different. The same way, but finally they are using Android is the main basic ways. The same way, whenever we talk about the Linux main distribution, what do we have this is? So one distribution is Red Hat, but if that Red Hat based the distribution from the different providers are available. Like how we have the Samsung, OnePlus, or what else? I mean, I'm not Xiaomi, like different that providers which who is providing that like the mobile softwares. Like that Red Hat, CentOS, Fedora, OpenSUSE, they're all the different distributions are available. But another main distribution which we consider Ubuntu also. So this is the Debian based Linux distribution. Like how we have that another type of distribution from the Apple, iOS based mobile. But Apple is the monopoly, the no alternative. But here the Ubuntu Debian based distribution, yes, we have the Debian is one flavor, Ubuntu, or Linux Mint. They're all from the different providers, different the vendors they are giving that, but they are using the backend Debian based Linux distribution. Yeah, so main distributions, if we just talk at Red Hat or the Ubuntu, but from the Red Hat, yes. So in real time, so the most of the application environments in the live environments for the Linux, which we see that Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Some R&D environments like POCs doing that R&Ds, or some social networking kind of that application, they use it Debian based Linux distributions. They're all mostly the open source based the application they use it, but the Red Hat Enterprise Linux is the mostly which we see that. But if you're working with the CentOS or the Red Hat, they're all same flavors, almost the same. But some user interface, some commands, some little bit on the package management wise, the difference. Yeah, Red Hat popular in the banking application, airlines application, or telecom application, or healthcare. And another one is a CentOS from this Red Hat flavor. Yeah, Red Hat Enterprise Linux and CentOS. Mostly we see that these two types of the devices. And Debian-based operating systems, the Ubuntu is one of the popular one. So for the startups, that is open source kind of, or SaaS-based application or social networking application, which we see that Ubuntu or Debian-based distributions. Finally, whatever the distribution doesn't matter for us. Whenever you are learning the Linux, Linux is Linux. That means Linux is a universal component. So Linux concepts are the universal, and each distribution is slightly different. On the base of the suppose, whenever you are using that Apple or Android, so initially somewhat, I mean, the main objective is the same, but initially some interfaces point of view or apps point of view, which you should know that something, right? So far you have used Android, but you are moving to the Apple. But initially some understanding is required on that distribution. The same way, so the universal concepts which we have, the concepts whatever we are going to discuss, that is the universal concepts. Suppose if you are learning that CentOS, so generic commands as a user interface point of view, user point of view, that is almost the same commands which you can use it on the Ubuntu also. But if you're working with the package management, some networking configurations, some file system point of view, managing that, that is a, yeah, the packages point of view, that's slightly different. Yeah, you can accomplish the same goals on the most Linux distributions. Goal is the same. The same goals you can accomplish from almost all the distributions. Yeah, finally, the Linux distribution, that is a combination of kernel with packages. Or in our mobile terminology, what we can say, that is Android with its own the Play Store, or Apple is having its own App Store. So it is kind of the distribution. And main distributions are RHL and Ubuntu, and CentOS, yes, RHL with with its own branding logos and all that. Yeah, this is about before going to work with this Linux understanding, yes, which we should know this concept. Are you clear about this? So whenever I'm using about words about Ubuntu or CentOS, so just understand about it, all the two different distributions. Working on the Linux, the main suppose as a the Linux user point of view, the commands almost the same, but somewhat administration, if you go to that, the little bit different. Administration activities point of view, a little bit different, but remaining almost all the activities are the same. Yeah, good response from everyone. Thank you. Now let's talk it about it. how do we launch this Linux virtual machine and all that's okay. I'll come back tomorrow. But before that, one more concept which we should know is, are we going to launch that machines from the scratch in the real time? Do you get the scope of it? Are you going to launch from the scratch?
No.
Yeah, that is no. So if you're doing that like as automation, some activities, yeah, maybe you will get it from the scratch. But existing environments, yes, whenever you are joining to the projects, most of that existing application or existing environment, until there is a possibility of getting the new project and working on the new project. Okay, how do we launch the virtual machine? We'll come back to that. But for about a practice that is required. But once the server is up and running, suppose you join to the organization, and once you join, and yes, manager says about, or like a client asks about it, was connected to this particular server and restart particular service. But how do you connect it to the servers? What are the tools? Yeah, let me quickly give me that today. What are the like different protocols? This is especially understanding about protocols. If you're good with this understanding these concepts, so yes, you can the log off, no issues, and you can join this tomorrow. But the main concepts what do we have, this is some protocols understanding. You are connecting to the remote system is nothing but, yes, you should know some protocols. What are the protocols? Yeah, once I mean you just understand that you have already the data center and you are joining to, I mean you suppose, let's take it, you are joining to the project and you are yeah, once you join to the project they give that the laptop or desktop system, and from that system, suppose now as we're talking that the client is saying that, so connect it to the server and restart the service. He has given the server details, but how do you connect to the server and how do we restart the service? Restarting the service that is available in our local system, whatever they have given. Suppose once you join, they give the laptop to you, right? Laptop or a desktop, whatever it is. But in that laptop itself, we have all the servers. So this local system is you have about the IP address, username, and password. They will give that these details where you are going to log in it. But if you like to restart the server is not available in your local system. That is in the data center where all the physical the hardware that have been set up. That is the storages, networks, databases with the high availability features, load balancing. So we don't see this in our local system. That is in the, what do we say, that data center. So in this data center, but this data center is one physical location, whether that is in Hyderabad or US. So in one of the physical location. So on the base of the client, they are going to set up that. That is a cloud. If you move into that, that is another advantage. We'll come back the cloud features, but for the time, just understand it. The data center, the client has taken and has set up all the servers with the storages and the databases. Now, in one of the host, which is in the data center, you need to connect it and you need to restart some service here. But how do you do that? They have given the laptop to you and you need to restart the service on the remote host. What do you need to do? Or what are the inputs that is required? First of all, you need to have the connectivity from the local system to this data center, right? Yeah, this is, I mean, the data center completely that is in the different network. And about your local system or laptop or desktop which you are using, that is a different network. This is about your office network, and this is about your servers network. But from the local system to the server network, we need to connect, which we use it VPN. They share it about it VPN details. That is simple one URL where you can access, and with username and password, with the credentials they share it to you. So first you need to connect from about your local system to a remote data center. So network communication is required. So VPN server detail they share it to you. Okay, once the VPN has been used and you have access this network, because this is the secure network, everyone cannot access this, only authorized people. That is from about your office network. This is one site, and this is another site. Site to site, the VPNs are we have the different approaches in the VPN. Yeah, they share it about that VPN. You need to use it, that VPN, and you need to connect. Once it has been connected, but now within this data center, particular host. But how do you identify the host? That is going to have it IP address or host name. That is required. Yeah, first, how do I access this network? That is the first point. You need to ask them. They share that details, VPN details. Receives the details and connect it to the network. That is maybe the VPN software which you need to install it, and you need to use it username and password, or maybe that is a link where you need to access the link and you need to create a session of it. Okay, once it has been connected, but how do we access a particular host? Whether that could be database server, whether that could be middleware, or the web server, or report server, or monitoring services. How to access it is next you need to have that IP address host with username and password details. So you need to get all the details. So blindly say that. So if the client says that restart the service, no, we don't accept it blindly. So we need to have it all the details. So first you need to ask it. So where is the network? Access the server. So please provide that network details. And then once it is connected to the network, then give me that host details, which is server. So if you have these details, then from about our local system, you can connect it to that, to this data center using some tools. I mean, the tools has to be installed in our local system. But what are the tools that is required? What are the tools that is required? Anyone? That's already showing this in the screen. Fine. So what are the main tools that we use? It is SSH tools or RDP communication. If the server is a Linux based server, we need to use it SSH based protocol. Or if the system is Windows system, if the remote system is Linux, different protocol. If the remote system is Windows, different protocol. So you need to know that. So the remote system, is it Windows based system or is it a Linux based system? So on the basis of this, the tools required to use it. So what are the tools that we have? It is, if the Linux based systems, we use it SSH clients. We have the mobile XTEM, the putty, git bash, different tools. Different client uses the different tools, but you should know SSH client. And sometimes another requirement is Yes, you need to copy some files from the local system to the server or from the server to the local system. Then we should know how do we copy the files from the local system to the remote or remote to remote. Yeah, sometimes remote to this system to this system you need to copy, or this system to this system you need to copy. Files copying, file sharing. If the storage server which is available, then we can use it the storage approaches. But sometimes you need to copy the files from here to here. Yeah, we need to use it some WinSCP tools from the especially local system you are trying to do that the files copying. But even this one also is not recommended WinSCP these days, as we have the development approaches and the version controlling tools. With version controlling tools we can share it. That's I'll come back later. But OS level, if you just talk it from the Windows system, if you like to copy the files to the Linux, then we use it WinSCP. Yeah, PuTTY is a simple one SSH client, the where you need to enter that host name and the port number. And once you log in, then it is going to prompt the username and passwords. A simple tool. Then you can connect it and you can run the commands. Our WinSCP is, as we are talking about it, files to copy. Yes, here the host name and port number with username and password. You need to enter that. Then it is going to give that about your local system and the remote system, and you can copy the drag and drop the files from here to here or here to here. So these are all the tools that you need to have it installed in your system on the first day whenever you join to the organization. Are you clear about this point? So don't think that you are going to create or setting up this data center from the scratch. So you will be having this already existing servers. But once you join and whatever laptop they have given to you, so you need to approach to that the team, and you need to make to that what is the SH client they are using, and what is like the data center, and in that data center, yes, what are the type of the distribution they are using about it. Is it Windows based flavor of the system, or is it Linux based? But if it is a Linux, is it Red Hat based or Ubuntu based, that is Debian based? So you need to know all these details. And not only that, if you have this any particular activity to perform it, yes, that's activity to complete it. Yes, which data center I need to connect it to the data center. So what is the network channel I need to use it? That is VPN server details. And once it is connected to the network, yes, which host I need to access, that host related IP address, username and password. These details which you should know. Once you know these details, then in our local system we need to have that SH clients or RDP clients or WinSCP or some development related tools. Yes, you need to have it in your local system on the base of the client which they are using about it, that software's installation, and getting ready to work with the environment. So if you don't know that, how do we connect it to the systems? Suppose you know that, okay, whenever you are learning about it, some the Tomcat server, how do you start it, stop it, we know it. But even if you know that concept, but if you don't know how to connect it to this host where the Tomcat is running to restart it, then you cannot perform it that activity, right? So first and foremost is, so knowing about the infra and the tools which they are using, that tools get ready in your laptop or desktop. This is first and foremost which we need to look into that. So once you join that, are you clear about this point? So these are all the basic things, but very, 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 very important. Yeah, good, awesome. I see there's some responses who are in active mode. Yeah, good. So finally, what is the conclusion that we're talking this is? Yeah, so if we're going to look into that, so data center access is nothing but, yeah, that is first we should know Windows or Linux based systems or the Linux. As we have the types of the distributions, is it the Red Hat or Ubuntu? But why we have the distributions is there are from the different providers. We have the different Linux flavors of the system, but internal kernel and on the base of the packages and utilities programs point of view, little bit different from these distributions. But main agenda, main goal is the same. If you are working this on any flavor of the Linux operating system, but on the base of the versions, the provider's point of view, yes, little bit differences. That's which we should understand on that the concepts. Yeah, the next activity what we have to see is launching the virtual machine. Yes, if you like to practice about our Linux activities, yes, we should know that how do I launch it, the Linux operating system on the Windows. Can I launch it? Linux operating system on the Windows. Suppose now I am using the Windows based operating system. Can I use it on this Windows operating system about the Linux operating system? Or do I need to install the separate Linux flavor of the system? What do I need? What do we need to do that? Anyone, please? Yes, Ajay. Yes, correct. Using VirtualBox, we can launch the Linux operating system. Suppose my Windows operating system is having the something 8 GB of the RAM. I have the 16 GB. Let's that is different. Okay, let's think it about. You have that whatever laptop 8 GB. How many of you are having this at least 8 GB of the RAM? So main prerequisites for these practices: 8 GB RAM. If you are good, if you are having, is good. Even though if you have the 4 GB, that is fine, no issues. Yes, can you type that? What is the RAM size that you have? Disk size, no issues. I mean, we don't have this any specification on this, but at least I need to have the RAM and the core processor. Core processor, if you have the Intel Core i3 onwards, then we are good. Awesome. Everyone is having 8 GB at least. Good. Then you can use it about your laptop itself for the demonstrations. Even if you have 4 GB, also no issues. You can use it that. But recommended is at least 8 GB. Yes, that is recommended. But anyway, next onwards we are going to use the cloud. First initial, while whenever we are learning the Linux, initial that is required to get it all these um, the virtual machines, we are going to launch it in our local system itself. But once we start the cloud, then cloud resources we are going to use it that. But I have the 8 GB that is recommended. Yeah, so on that, I mean, on the Windows system itself, we can launch it that the two or more the virtual machines or one or more virtual machine on the base of the requirement by using that virtualization software. Yes, we need to install the virtualization software. But what are the different types of the virtualization softwares are available in the market? First of all, what is the virtualization? Yeah, so let's understand that concept. Yeah, what is this virtualization? Let's go ahead quickly to get that the virtualization concepts. As we are talking about it, yes, we have the 8 GB RAM and something like a 250 or 500 GB hard disk and some core process units on the Windows system. That means laptop. All these, the laptop whenever we are buying, we are looking at all these specifications, right? Yeah, before this virtualization when it was invented, if you just try to understand it, it is started in 2000 around of it. But before the virtualization, how they were doing this is like as about our laptop. So there is no like other multiple virtual machine concepts. So one physical server. So that is all the hardwares which we have, that is CPUs, memories, the network interfaces, the disk. So where they install that the OS directly, and application they will deploy that on this operating system directly. So single OS image for the machine, and software and hardware tightly coupled. Yes, this OS layer and hardware layer, there is no sharing option. So it is about like you are using the Windows operating system. So if you have the 8 GB, 8 GB only for the Windows, that is tightly coupled now. If we just talked about our laptop current state, what are the Windows operating system which have used? That Windows operating system is going to use the backend all the hardware resources, the storage and all the things. That is tightly coupled, right? But are you going to optimize that all the resources with this approach? Suppose my application is required. Okay, you have set up this 8 GB RAM and you have everything, but application is required only around 5 GB. But what about the remaining 3 GB? 3 GB honestly it is waste, right? But can I share that the 3 GB of the RAM to that another operating system where I can run it my another application? In this approach, that the before virtualization approach, that is not possible. Yeah, multiple applications on the same machine they were running that because there is no sharing that the hardware resources. This is the tightly coupled on the same operating system. Multiple application they are running and managing that all the application, that is a conflict and underutilize the resources and inflexible and costly infrastructure. Yeah, all these the challenges to overcome that. It's around 2K, that is from the 2000 onwards, like virtualization concept has introduced. Yeah, hardware independence of operating system and applications. Yeah, hardware now you have the CGP same thing, but one application that is required the 5 GB, another application is required the 3 GB. Then you can share it that the hardware resources. Yes, these are physical hardware resources. You can virtualize it. Virtualize it nothing but yeah, somewhere physically it is located, but you are just sharing these resources to this operating system. Virtualization. Yeah, you can get it all the hardware. So you have the memory 8 GB. Now you can allocate that to this operating system 5 GB. And hard disk we have the 500 GB. You can allocate to here something 200 GB, which is required for this application. So hardware, you are virtualizing as per this application requirement. And application OS we can install it. So this application is required the Ubuntu, yes, Ubuntu, and with its own hardware resources. And another application which is required the Red Hat application, is Red Hat operating system and its own hardware resources. Yeah, hardware independence of the operating system and applications. Yeah, virtual machines can be provisioned to any system. This can be provisioned to any system and can manage OS and application as a single unit. Now here if you just observe that application and application related OS and that OS required hardware resources, it has been isolated or it has been encapsulated. It is together. But here separate OS for about your application and this is separate OS for about your application. So application it related its OS, its hardware components which are required, you can encapsulate it. And this entire unit what we call is one virtual machine. This is another virtual machine or server we'll call it. This is one server, this is another server. Yeah, what are the different approaches are available? Yeah, now virtualization was invented. After inventing that, but we have the different types of approaches which we can go ahead. So that's what are the types which we have. This is two types of the approaches. That's we say that type 1, that is a bare metal hypervisor architecture, and type 2 hypervisors, that is a hosted architecture. So what is the difference between the type 1 and type 2? In which use cases we'll use the type 1 and which use cases we use the type 2? So type 1 we say that the bare metal hypervisor architecture. So here on this one is, yeah, so they buy that like all the hardware resources of the server which is required. But here that virtualization software directly, we don't need that any separate OS here. So directly we can install that the hypervisor layer or virtualization layer, and we can share these hardware resources to the different virtual machines. So it does not require admins to install a host OS, especially host OS. So we don't need that any separate OS here. So directly you can install that. We have that the different solutions. I'll come back. Yeah, so we can install this virtualization layer, and using this virtualization layer, can directly share these hardware resources to the different virtual machines. Yeah, it doesn't not require admins to install a host OS. It has a direct access to hardware resources, which results in the better performance, scalability, and stability. And the top 5 hypervisors, which we use it in this bare metal type: VMware or vSphere, which we have the ESXi, or Microsoft, they have the Windows Server 2012 Hyper-V, or Xen servers, or Citrix one, yeah, Citrix Xen servers, which are available in the market, or Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization, or HEV, or IBM. So there are the different softwares which are available as a virtualization layer on the bare metal. In the real time, the data centers you are accessing is nothing but data center administrators. They are going to use it. They are going to set the first physical racks, physical hardwares, the RAM, network interfaces, all that. And on top of this, they install these kind of that software. This is a separate administrator. They will work it. We are not going to worry about it. VMware administrator or Windows Server Hyper-V administrator or RHEV administrators. So they are going to take care of that, installing the software and allocating these resources to the multiple virtual machines. So who is managing the data centers? they are going to use it these hypervisors. That is a bare metal. But type 2, which we have, this is a hosted architecture. What is this hosted architecture? So suppose now we have this about our laptop, which is having this some Windows operating system with 8 GB RAM and some 500 GB hard disk. But I need to launch it I need to have the two Linux virtual machines with each capacity 2 GB, 2 GB. Then what is the solution? Can I use it my laptop to launch the two Linux virtual machines? Yes, you can use it. But already I have this installed the Windows, right? Yes, even the no issues. So on this, my host operating system, what is this now? Windows. Windows is my host operating system. On this host operating system, I can install the virtualization layer software, and using that virtualization layer software, I can share it my the physical hardware resources which I'm having in my laptop to that virtual machine. I can run it parallelly on the Windows separate applications, and parallelly at the same time using these virtualization softwares, I can install my Linux operating systems, or even the Windows also you can launch it here. This one we say the hosted architecture, which we use it mostly in the development environments or the testing with single hosted machines, the which we use it. But this is not the production solution. This is the solution for the development, especially. Suppose as a DevOps engineer, we need to quickly launch that two Ubuntu systems. But you don't have any cloud environment and you don't have any other environment. But you have about your laptop, and with the capacity, okay, 8 GB, that is also fine. Then yes, you can directly install in your laptop on the Windows system. Now Windows is about your hosted virtual machine, hosted operating system. On that you can install this virtualization layer software, and you can launch the two Linux virtual machines within a minutes. Yeah, it installs and runs an application. Yeah, it relies on host OS. Yes, host OS is required here for device support and physical resource management. And type 2 hypervisors which are available in the market, VMware Workstation or VMware Player, yeah, is a free virtualization hypervisor. Or VirtualBox, yeah, Oracle VirtualBox. We are going to use it Oracle VirtualBox, and Microsoft Virtual PC or VMware Server. There are the different solutions are available, which we can install on the host operating system. Are you clear about this? Understanding this types of the virtualizations. So if you are good, then say that VART, that is virtualization. Type that VART. Good, 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 good. Yeah, good man. Yeah, so the type 1, type 2, but we are going to work with the type 2. Yeah, tomorrow, whatever the virtual machine we are going to launch it that with the virtual box. Anyway, I will talk it. That's so what we are going to do this, or what are the softwares we are going to use it to launch that Linux systems for what a practice point of view. We are going to use it one of the DevOps tool here, Vagrant. Not only the virtualization software, we are going to use it DevOps tools also. That is a Vagrant. Yeah. So tomorrow we will continue that. So what are the software that we are going to use it to launch the virtual machines in our local operating system, which is belong to the type 2 virtualization approach. Type 1, we don't get the chance of it. That is separate administration which you need to learn. That is not at all required for us. So if you are going to work with the data centers, yes, data centers team, they are going to manage it about it. They are going to use it that virtualization type 1 type of bare metals. But for about DevOps engineers point of view, as a developer activities, if you like to work with us like virtual machines, yes, we should know type 2 based virtualization approach. That is, if you have this already host OS, on the host OS, installing the virtualization software and launching the virtual machine. That is, we'll talk it tomorrow. So are you clear these points for today? So main three concepts which we are trying to understand it. One is Linux different distributions. Second one, that's which you are trying to understand. If you are connecting to the remote server, yes, remote server is not in your local system, that is in one of the data center. First of all, you need to have the network communication, and then you need to have the tools to connect to the server. That is, just keep this in mind so far. And the third concept which you are trying to understand is, yes, how the virtual machines will be managed. Yes, in the like live environments, as the hardware's better utilization point of view or optimization point of view, or sharing that hardware resources to the number of virtual machines point of view, we use that virtualization approaches. But bare metal, that is recommended as a more optimized and scalability feature of the virtual machine clusters to configure it. But we don't need that much administration on it. The concepts, yes, we need to know the virtualization, but on the type 2 based approach as a DevOps engineer point of view. Okay, so those points, just keep this in mind for today and note it and prepare the running notes on this. And we'll meet tomorrow sharp 9:30. So is it clear to everyone? Clear. That is awesome. Perfect. Good. Clear. 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 Good. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all. That's all from myself today. And yeah, please sign up to that and try to access the PPT section. And please go ahead, or you can just browse it in the Google also. What is the virtualization and some YouTube channel? Just refer it some videos whenever you have time. Maybe you will get it some additional points. Yeah, keep on browsing that. Yes, you need to have that some additional time spending on the exploring the concepts. So today, if you discuss this one concept, yes, explore that first to have it at least from about our material completion. Then go ahead and explore from the Google and YouTube channels also. Keep on exploring. That is one of the important activity for the DevOps engineer. Yeah, thank you. So that's all from my side for today. I'm going to log off and we'll meet tomorrow sharply 9:30. And one more point, who opted for offline? Yes, you can join offline from tomorrow onwards. No issues on it. So offline and online parallelly it will be continued. Thank you.